Welcome to Foundations, a series of introductory videos brought to you by the faculty of Memoria College. Each video in this series introduces students to a single foundational text in the Western Great Books tradition. Each text is part of the core curriculum of the Memoria College Master's Program. If you would like to dig deeper into any of these texts, receive expert faculty instruction, and discuss these texts with other like minded students in live online classes, please visit us at memoriacollege.org. I'm here today with Martin Cothran and Kyle Janke, both faculty of Memoria College, and I am Dan Sheffler. Today we are discussing Shakespeare's Hamlet. Kyle, what makes Hamlet one of the great books?
Yeah, well, I think in as far as literature is one of the humanities, and therefore, the study of what it means to be human, Hamlet is by that definition one of the great works of the humanities. It's a play about what it means to be human. And to clarify what I mean by that, I think it's very much a play about human inaction or human inability to act, in the sense that it creates this hierarchy of the gods, which can act and are able to act. There's an idea that divinity acts without inhibition, and nature flows on its way without inhibition. Nature is what nature is and content, and man is somehow in between those two things, caught by his conscience, not quite a god, but also not nature, something more than nature. And in that way, it really defines an interesting aspect, fascinating aspect of what it means to be human.
Beautiful. What would you say, Martin? What makes Hamlet one of the great books?
I I think Shakespeare confounds those kinds of questions. I, I, reading this again, I've read it several times before. I can't say why it's good, other than he articulates, and I feel like I'm repeating Kyle here. He articulates what it is to be a moral, rational creature. And he does it in 15,000 different ways. I can't point to one. Um, and I think that's part of Shakespeare's greatness, is that he's almost unanalyzable. Um, he's a whole, and it's hard to piece out one particular thing that you think is really great, because it's all great. So I know it's a bad answer to the question.
Well, one of the things that Mortimer Adler says in the introduction to the Great Books series is that one of the defining features of a great book is that you can continually come back to it over and over and over again, and it's continually revealing more. It's inexhaustible in that sense. Whereas, if I don't know, if I read some contemporary YA novel, it might be a fun read, the first time, or some of these detective stories, you read it one time and okay, mystery solved, that was fun, that was entertaining, and then it's over. But I've had this experience teaching Hamlet over and over and over again over the years, that every single time I read it, every single time I teach it, every single time I discuss it, there's some new dimension that's revealed that I didn't notice before. So it's an always giving kind of resource.
I agree with it.
So where are we in history here? Where does Hamlet fit into the sequence of the great books?
I think in one sense it leaps out of history a little bit. I don't know that it fits so tightly into some sort of chronological sequence throughout history. But just Martin, everything that you were saying, it transcends history. It's talking about those transcendent, eternal truths of what it does mean to be human. And any human being in any historical context reading that is going to find something to benefit, to learn from.
It's sort of supra-historical. I mean, even when he's writing his historical plays and the characters are speaking Elizabethan English and saying things that could probably only be said in, Julius Caesar. I mean, is Julius Caesar, is that taking place in that time? Well, yeah, but more than being about Julius Caesar, the play is written by William Shakespeare. And so you get this completely, um, this this play that is really outside of history. I think. I mean, you could say it's, he's living in the Renaissance. So, but even that is inadequate to describe the setting of Shakespeare himself.
Well, you had mentioned the very first thing. There's this sort of question mark hanging over the entire text. Hamlet is asking these series of questions, and even by the end of the text, I'm not entirely sure that we get definitive answers. I mean, the most famous line from the text is "to be or not to be." I mean, that is the question. There's this question mark hanging over the entire text, and in many ways, that's a very modern angle. Um, there's this sort of existential angst, if you will, that's going through Hamlet. I've got a favorite passage, in fact, to read that has to do with this. Um, you mentioned man being situated between the divine and nature, and I think there's a perspective here that is somewhat new in the tradition of the great books. We're in the time of Francis Bacon. The Novum Organon is published near this, and so there's this question mark about man's place in the cosmos and how we're supposed to understand the natural world. It's either a traditional religious God-centric conception of the cosmos, or a reductive, mechanistic, evacuated conception of the cosmos. And this is from Act 2, Scene 2, famous line. What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action. How like an angel in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. So we have those two perspectives. Man is either this beautiful, amazing, divine, angelic paragon of animals, or there's this darker side. Maybe man is nothing more than the quintessence of dust.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's uh continuity throughout the play. I mean, it's one thing to look for that can really clarify a reading of what Shakespeare's trying to get across. There are several references early on in the play to Hamlet likening himself to Hercules, and certainly throughout the course of the drama, he takes on himself a task, sort of a Herculean labor that he feels is sort of he's outmatched. He feels is too much for him to carry. Um, but just with that, I mean that references to Hercules and Hercules being the son of the gods or the son of a god, um, and caught in between. He's mortal, he's human, but he's the son of divinity. I think it's summarized very nicely in that passage you read. Yeah.
Well, and Harold Goddard, who's my favorite commentator on Shakespeare, and a great read himself, is it. The second best thing to reading Shakespeare is reading about Shakespeare, and he says that the the central question for Shakespeare is, what is the cure for chaos? And you could think about that for a long time. Really, what exactly does even that mean? And it's this, and I'm mentioning this in regard to man being this sort of middle creature, below the angel, above the animal, because it creates all kinds of chaos. It creates moral chaos, um, specifically, which is what he's dealing with all through this play. And it's to see Hamlet engaged in a contest with himself throughout all of this, because he's, and I don't know if we had this discussion somewhere. What I recently I was talking about, I was asking the question, did was Hamlet the first character in literature to talk to himself? And I think that's what it's this metaphysical chaos, and he's trying to find his place in it, and he's dealing with these events that just bring all of this out. And I I think it's just fascinating to watch. I mean, you feel sorry for the poor guy, but he's a human being, and ultimately, it's like it. You look at him and you think, is this in a way man in his most essential aspect, dealing with a moral dilemma and trying to negotiate his way through it. I mean,
Yeah.
that brings out the best and the worst in man, right?
Yeah. Well, there's two. I mean, so one on a slightly lighter note, the line directly after the passage that you just read is essentially kind of a dirty joke. It's base humor, right? I mean, they take Hamlet's last line, and like high schoolers in a high school class, they're snickering at what he said. Which is, again, it's that human element that Shakespeare is so aware of, that he can ask this deep, profound question, but then follow it up with, yeah, but there's the dust side of humanity too. There's the base humor side. Yeah, I think just what you were saying directly in the middle of the play, where there should be a climactic death, a climactic, vengeful killing. Right. I mean, this is the task that's put on Hamlet. There is instead a mistake that costs an innocent man his life. And there's a moment. I mean, Hamlet seems to be standing over the body, thinking, in the deepest level, what have I done? What does this mean? This means something, but then again, it's just dust. So what have I done?
Mm-hmm. So we're going to send our students off to read through this whole play. What should they be looking out for?
I would say, so two things. One, conflict. In any drama, every single scene of a drama is driven by conflict. Conflict between two characters, however small the conflict is, it's always there. And if you can identify that, it makes it a lot easier to follow why the characters are doing what they're doing, and why they're saying what they're saying, and how they're developing as characters. Starting with the opening conflict, which I think happens early on when we first meet Hamlet. He's being persuaded by the king and the queen, his mother, Hamlet's mother. Hamlet is being persuaded not to grieve too much for his father, and he's being told that death is common. Death is it's a part of life, and he reacts to that in a very real, visceral, human way. He says, "Yes, it is common, but that's a problem for me." Right? Death is a thing that shouldn't be common. So, and that starts that existential questioning going through the whole play. I think that's an important thing to see. And then throughout the play, as you read it, continuity, those points that connect this later part to an earlier part. So when Hamlet is talking to his mother, describing his father, saying that he was like a god, they're looking at a portrait of his father. He's saying, look, he's like a god. We should be remembering the Hercules comments from early in the play. When Ophelia drowns, and she's sort of taken into that liquid element, that's the way it's described. We should remember when Hamlet, famously is his opening soliloquy when he's alone for the first time. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt and dissolve into a dew. Like this is, what happens to Ophelia is what Hamlet is wishing for at the beginning of the play. So those points of continuity, I think, help a reading along.
Mm-hmm. That plays right into the assignment I'd love to give to the students, which is to just ask the question about the whole Ophelia subplot. What is the role of that? What's it doing there? How does it fit into the larger play? I was recently reading the autobiography of W.B. Yeats, and a lot of people know Yeats today as a lyric poet, but in his own time, he wrote a number of plays, and he directed a theater in Ireland and whatnot. And in the autobiography, he makes this comment about leaving out the Ophelia scenes from stagings of Hamlet, and apparently this was a common practice in Victorian theater. It is a very long play, admittedly, so I think you got to find some, if you're going to stage the play, you got to find some practical ways to get through it. But question for the students: is that an okay move? Can we leave the Ophelia scenes out? Are they simply this adventitious growth onto the main plot of the story, or is it absolutely necessary? What would you say, Martin? What assignment would you give our students?
Excuse me. I think I would. I was talking about conflict, and I think it would be a really good exercise to chart out what all these conflicts are. It's a good exercise because when you're teaching literature, you kind of learn uh, a story can have one conflict if it maybe like if it's a short story or something, or it may have a number of conflicts, and it may have a number of different kinds of conflicts because we think of the most obvious one is a conflict between two characters or something. But in this play in particular, the conflict is within himself. And it's so in that sense, it's a very, and there are those psychological conflicts, and they're the most interesting, right? Um, and so I think really this whole play is, again, it's Shakespeare, it's Hamlet talking to himself, and it's Hamlet trying to figure out how to get it revealed that his uh, uncle has killed his father, and not doing a very good job of it because he has the play put on that is reenacting the events of what the ghost has told Hamlet his uncle has done, but he doesn't leave it there, and he just keeps he tw- he should leave it there because that's the indictment. That's the thing that's going to make them feel the most guilty. That's the thing. And instead he tries to do he goes beyond that, and he tries to do it himself. And in all that time he's second guessing himself. He's arguing with himself. So yeah, I mean, this may be in terms of this internal psychological conflict. This may be the greatest explication of that. I don't know.
Well, we hope we've whet your appetite to go dig deep in reading Hamlet. Again, if you would like to discuss this text with other like-minded students and receive more faculty instruction, please visit us at memoriacollege.org. We teach this class in 601, the Introduction to the Liberal Arts, the Education of a Free Man. I would love to see you in that class.